to have Commissioner Burney pointed to that position from the public. And I did state last week that I would be willing to give up my seat there. I did find out that the chair election will happen at the next meeting, so it won't affect anything if I'm pulled off of that. Most likely Mike Fleck, who's the current vice chair, will move up the chair anyway.
Okay.
So
Well, I would certainly,
I'll leave that to the board.
I would certainly favor that substitution. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I think you clarified, forgive me, but yeah, my understanding was you were staying on because there was a vote that you wanted to see through, but now you're saying that that's,
Well, I was concerned about being chair and then getting pulled off.
Right.
And what that would do to the organization.
Right.
But I wanted to check when the switch over to the new chair would be, which is the next meeting, so there wouldn't be any impact.
Gotcha.
If that was my concern. And we just met last week, so I chaired that meeting.
You do know they meet 4 times a month for 3 hours.
I would prefer Chair Sorensen to be on that
Yeah. They meet once a
at
month.
7:30 in the
They
morning.
meet once a month, Thursdays, in Springfield at noon, and they give you pizza, so.
So unless there's objection, I'll include Commissioner Burney in that slot. And then I think all items have been resolved on this Board Order 08. If there's interest, I'll entertain a motion to approve Board Order ending in 08.
I'll move approval of order number 1901-1508.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Bozievich, seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the board order on the, just for clarification, Human Services Commission will be Farr and Burney. Lane Regional Air Protection Agency will be Burney. Metropolitan Policy Council will have Sorensen and Burney. No alternate there. And as noted, all the other items, and Ms. Jones, are you following this? Is it clear? Very good. I think it is. Motion's been made, second's been made. Further discussion?
Just briefly, I wanted to mention the Mental Health Advisory Local Alcohol and Drug Planning Committee, which I was just appointed to as liaison, is meeting right now as we meet.
Okay.
I believe it's 2:30 on this day.
Is there a way for us to try to accommodate that, or if we are holding these longer meetings, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, is there a way to move it, ask them to move it? We're going to obviously have the housing, Homes for Good board meeting that we moved up to 1:30, which the commissioners here recognize they are also Homes for Good commissioners, and the Homes for Good board is meeting on Wednesday afternoons once a month in this room.
Right. I could ask that. That board is a 15-member board.
Yep.
Most of them are professionals who
Yep.
take time off of their job to come. So
Yep.
we take a little bit of
moving to
coordination change.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, in my view, being the liaison or representative does not require you to attend all meetings. It requires you to attend all meetings that you have time to attend, and it is, part of the difficulty of doing this job. Often we have to be in 3 places at once. So
I already learned that.
have to make choices. So with regard to the board order ending in 08, is there any further comment, questions, or concerns? Yes, sir.
Forgive me. So there's no way we can accommodate?
This is the first time there's ever been a conflict, so it is rare.
Okay.
We are going to make every effort to try to accommodate, but I will say this, if we are going to keep on a Tuesday, Wednesday cycle, then we will have to meet on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Okay.
Otherwise, we will have to meet on other days, and that will create even more problems. So my suggestion is we try to keep on a Tuesday, Wednesday cycle. But it's up to the board. 3 members of the board can decide when they want to set up a board meeting. So I agree. We should try to accommodate everybody as much as possible. So anything further on item B, 2B? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Vote is 5-0 on item 2B. Board order ending in 08. Okay, items 2C, possible continued discussion, possible action on order 19-01-15-09 in the matter of appointing representatives to Lane County standing committees. This board order seeks to get the appointment using our current system to appoint members to the standing committees, facilities, finance and audit, legislative, policies and procedure, and technology management. I laid out my idea of how to deal with this last week. There's some complexity to that, and we need to have a decision about what we're going to do. Are we going to appoint the committees? Are we going to, Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you. So this kind of, I wanted to wait till we got to this item to speak to this issue. At least the 8 previous years that I've been a board member, our regular meetings were on Tuesdays. We reserved Wednesdays for work sessions and special meetings, and we did not use them on a regular basis. Maybe once a month we had a Wednesday item. So it wasn't a regular workday for the board. Staff could more or less plan that Tuesdays were board days, and that's when they had to make themselves available to the board, if they had board items, and particularly for Mr. Moker-Heisky that has to sit through our entire meetings. I don't believe it's a good idea for us to plan on meeting all day Tuesday and all day Wednesday. I don't think it's necessary. I also think it's an extreme waste of staff time. That said, I don't think it's a good idea for us to make these standing committees committees of the whole. And I expressed my opinion about that last week. And I don't think it's necessary for them to be committees of the whole. The facilities committee quite often is a series of reports on the progress of various construction projects. Going bang, bang, bang down a bunch of construction projects. I don't think that necessarily everybody on the board needs to sit and listen to every construction project status. There are some more important things we do also about starting to plan the early phases of the capital improvement plan before the drafts get done that come to the board as a whole anyway. All these committees don't make decisions. They refer stuff to the board for decisions. But there's a lot that happens in these committees that never even gets to board level. So my recommendation would be to leave these as standing committees, as they're spelt out current. If we change that, we also have to change Lane manual and a few other things. So and bylaws for these committees. Every one of these committees has bylaws that's been adopted and approved by the board. So there's a whole bunch of information in the background. But it's interesting that, as Chair Sorensen takes over, he has this desire to do Wednesday meetings. As I was chair, it was often difficult to schedule the once in a blue moon Wednesday meetings around Chair Sorensen because you tended to book things on Wednesdays quite often, even though we're supposed to reserve it. And that was kind of the whole deal for the last 8 years has been Tuesdays you knew you were in a board meeting all day. You didn't make any plans. You didn't set any meetings that conflicted with Tuesdays. You held Wednesday open on your calendar and tried, and knowing that it could be taken, but generally you would know the Thursday before if you were going to have any Wednesday meetings, and quite often you'd know it weeks before, because quite often the Wednesday items were stuff that got set up in a agenda team request because it was a more detailed work session or something, and had to be worked out with outside parties. So usually you knew a Wednesday meeting was coming as much as a month in advance. So I would like to see us handle this the way they've always been handled, and it's been successfully handled, and I don't know why there's a need for change.
I'll just say this, I do have the attendance record on the Board of Commissioners, so I'm pretty proud of that. But I would just say, you're right, the Facilities Committee, Finance and Audit Committee, Legislative Committee, Policies and Procedures Committee, Technology Management Committee, they do hear a lot of important things. I'm not dismissing how important they are. All I'm pointing out is that is that if the full board learns what the presentations are, that the full board will know about it. If only certain commissioners get to attend those meetings, and then it's less likely that the full board gets to know about it. Also, I just did a little bit of research ahead of making this proposal, and that is that these committees have met in total less than like 10 hours. So they're not, the number of hours they're meeting is not very much. Now, maybe that argues that a 2-hour meeting once every 2 months isn't going to be that big of a deal for whatever committee that we decide. The other elected officials of the county that are on these committees, I don't propose changing that at all. I really don't propose anything other than we make sure we all get the same information. And one thing that does drive the board, in different directions is when people are working on their special project, what they really care about, and then we lose sight of the whole. But I'm not running anything here. I'm simply making a proposal, and if the board doesn't want to do this or doesn't want to do it at this time, I'm totally open to that. But I'm just pointing out that, if these committees are meeting on something really important, like legislative matters, and only 1 or 2 commissioners are involved in the committee, then the rest of the commissioners will have questions, and they often do have questions, and then we've repeated the whole presentation. So
I have a question. Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry. I'm not trying to
no,
interrupt.
go ahead. Yeah.
For these committees that I think you're suggesting we're all a part of, is there anything precluding a board member for attending a committee that they're not assigned to, so that they can learn what they feel they need to learn and maybe accommodate that purpose?
Right. No, a few years
Only don't
ago.
participate.
Yeah, a few years ago, there was a big, sort of row on the board over who got appointed to these committees, and how come a third commissioner can't, or fourth commissioner can't come to the meeting, and the legal counsel then put a star on the notice, and it's fairly common now to say if 3 commissioners attend that meeting, they can't, 3 or more commissioners can attend that meeting. So
Yeah.
we've already accommodated for that, but I think Commissioner Farr is correct that typically the committee only wants to hear from the committee members, and is that fair or not? I haven't, when I haven't been appointed to a committee, I usually haven't gone.
And I've served on 3 of these 5 committees, so I can speak to those committees. Finance and Audit is probably the most active, except during the legislative sessions. And Finance and Audit, about 3 or maybe 4 times a year, we have a lengthy substantive meeting. The balance of the time can be cancelled, or it can be a 15-minute meeting. But that being said, I guess I have a question for you, Mr. Chair, regarding your recommendation. What is to preclude a board member who does not attend that committee from reading the minutes or listening to the audio of the meeting?
They, as I understand, that any standing committee has a notice, and it's commonly in the notice, that all commissioners can come, all commissioners can read the materials, all commissioners can participate.
They may not all participate.
Well,
The note actually says that they may attend and not participate.
maybe that could be our happy medium here to say, well, if commissioners feel important, if it's important enough for them to come, then they can go to the meeting and participate.
With the legislative committee, before I was appointed to it, I would sit in the back row and listen, but without saying anything. Sometimes leaving thoroughly. I mean, I took a prerogative that I
Sure,
could stay.
yeah, if you weren't a member.
Yeah. Yeah, because those meetings get rather lengthy.
They can, and it can be pretty dry in terms of the content. Now, there's the policy and procedure that standing committee has met historically and over the last 6 years very rarely. I think it can be a more robust committee than it has been. That's just the other side. But I wouldn't be, I'm leaning toward remaining with the current structure.
Okay.
That typically has 2 commissioners and other elected officials appointed to it, and then allowing commissioners to audit the meetings.
Well, maybe then that's what we ought to do is take, put some names on these committees, and aren't there 2 commissioners appointed to each committee?
Yes.
So we have to, if we're going to go with the idea that there's going to be 2 members of each of the 5 standing committees, I'm computing each commissioner gets to pick 2 committees, right? So if we have each commissioner pick 2 committees, we should be able to appoint the members, and then we will allow the commissioners that, as we have been, if they want to go to these committee meetings, they can. And that way, we just continue what we've been doing, and if the board wants to make a structural change. I just want to make it clear, my proposal was never to take the other members of the committees off. I was never proposing that we take, the people that know about technology off the technology management team. Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to say that I walked in here, I'm now a veteran of a week and a half. I walked in here appreciating what Chair Sorensen had proposed in terms of the 2 days, appreciating being able to be on every one of these standing committees, appreciating learning. A week and a half later, I must say that, and also appreciating the unbelievable support I've received from staff in order to hit the ground running. I mean, truly, accolades. But I can honestly say now, and no disrespect whatsoever, that seeing the demands on staff and being appreciative of that, I actually concur with if not the strength of it, the intent of kind of getting that order down from Commissioner Bozovic. I agree with that, and I fully intend to bone up and educate myself and not participate, but attend or observe some of these other standing committees, because I want to meet your original intent also.
Yeah, so, I mean, one idea is why don't we have, people just state their interests, and if each one of us takes 2 committees, then we've, put the workload out there, and B, that we have put the 2 wrapped names in the boxes, and it can be processed. So, yeah, go ahead, Ms. Jones.
Just for information for the new commissioners, since you're not aware, as you're deciding which committees you want to serve on, TMT only meets at the most twice a year. And policies and procedures is a quarterly meeting. Legislative committee is a quarterly meeting, other than when
As needed
and
during
then as
session.
needed
Which is
during
more than
session.
quarterly all day.
Finance and audit is monthly, and it, as Commissioner Farr has said, it tends to meet when it's scheduled to. And
Tomorrow.
facilities is also monthly, with meetings occasionally being canceled. Yeah, it's just finance and audit tomorrow. So, just so you know kind of what the schedules are for
Thank
those
you.
meetings.
Yeah, TMT's changed a bit. It used to be
Yes.
monthly.
Yes.
So we can do that now, or we can just state our preferences, and we can have Ms. Jones kind of compile a list of our preferences, and come back with hopefully a happy proposal. We can just do it right now, whatever you guys want to do.
One thing I will say, Mr. Chair, is that there is a Finance and Audit Committee meeting tomorrow with an agenda already prescribed. And that has, until this year, it was Commissioner Lycan was the chair. I was on the committee, and then Assessor Coles is on the committee.
So I'm hearing, at least on finance and audit, if we just went with the commissioner districts, we'd have Farr and Bernie on that.
It's a great committee.
Okay.
I do have some interest there. If there's some committee spread that we want to do.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to substitute for Commissioner Bernie on facilities?
Why don't we see where it ends up and then
Yeah.
we'll accommodate.
Okay,
I had been sitting on 3 committees, so I don't know how we divide that up, but I can tell you the 2 I'm interested in, which is facilities and legislative. But the legislative is because I'm so tied with the work that AOC is doing, and I'm in Salem all the time, but that's, that again is one of those positions where I may not always represent the majority of the board's opinion. But legislatives, whatever we decide, comes to the board for final decision anyway, so it's kind of like, I don't think I'll recommend something coming to the board that's gonna get overturned.
We don't put county effort into it before the board.
Yeah, we don't, until the board adopts legislative priorities or stances on bills and stuff.
And forgive me, I don't understand. So you've said a couple of times you might not represent the board, but if you were on that and the board approved what the legislative agenda was, you would be representing the board.
Yeah, well, I'm
Okay,
just
so-
saying, initially, as the legislative committee runs down the list of 200 bills we're
Right, at
looking
that
at
point,
in that
right.
meeting, and of which maybe only 30 come forward to the board for position stances.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Part of that
makes
is setting that initial position as it comes to the board in the report from legislative committee.
sense. Thank you.
So that's the one place where,
No, yeah.
you guys either can trust me not to send something to you that you're absolutely gonna just, or not, but I think I've shown up at AOC that I try and play to where I'm not making Benton County mad or Harney County mad, which is a tough thing to do. Yeah. Yeah, so, and it's one of the reasons why I'm a co-chair now, because people realize that I'm there to try and do what's best for the organization, which is not to split it, I try and look for only taking positions on things the body as a whole
Right.
can agree on. So that's up to you guys, but I have been on technology management team because I'm probably the most techno-savvy of the commissioners beforehand. I can't claim that anymore, though, because now
Oh, yes.
the commissioner is younger than me.
Oh, yeah, not referring to me.
But, so that's why I ended up on technology
That
management
is
team.
why I was going to say technology management
Yeah.
as well. but-
So I'd be more than happy to give up that seat, but that's up to you guys. And I've been on facilities forever, partly because of my engineering background and speaking the same language as the facilities people do, and it also ties well with the court. Security task force that I'm on, I'm appointed by the presiding judge to. You guys don't get to choose that. And the court facilities, liaison of the court facilities folks and all that stuff, it just kind of works together.
I've noticed a couple of times, did you want to be on any others? Because you've mentioned a couple.
Those finance and tech were the ones that I was kind of eyeing.
And the two, ironically, that I was eyeing were the legislative and facilities.
Well, join me on facilities, and I'll give up my seat on legislative if I need to. That's
Well,
why
let's
I
see
was
if
trying
you-
I was
see
trying
if
to
you even
basically
need to,
say, like
yeah.
El Rapa, I'll bow to the majority of the board of how you want to do that.
if I'm on legislative and I'm on policies and procedures, that's 2. If you're on facilities and technology,
Yeah.
that's 2. If you are on technology, what would be your second one?
Finance and
Finance and audit, okay. Then that's leaving
One blank spot.
Joe on legislative and policies and procedures. Does
I
that come
have-
out right?
I have Joe, Commissioner Bernie on legislative and facilities was
Right.
his.
Legislative and facilities,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, okay.
That puts Pat on finance and audit and policies.
Okay.
By default policies.
default.
which is
Okay,
fine.
Is that fine?
Now, legislative, Commissioner Sorensen, I always felt that it was a good spot for me in that I was formerly
Yep.
in the legislature.
Yep.
As were you.
yep,
And I would defer. I mean,
Okay,
That can also be a detriment, by the way.
Yeah.
so if it's facilities would be Commissioner Bozievich, Commissioner Burney, Finance and Audit would be Commissioner Farr, and Commissioner Buck. Legislative would be Commissioner Sorensen and Commissioner Farr.
No, Commissioner Burney.
Well, no, actually.
Or are you, did you just
Yeah,
switch? You're
if-
going to switch? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, policies and procedures, Sorensen and
Bernie?
Bernie. Okay, and technology, Commissioner Bozievich, Commissioner Buck. Did you get that, Ms. Jones?
I did.
Okay, any further discussion? I don't want to do that, you can't make me. I want to be on it,
I don't know. how
last
much-
chance for a year.
I don't know, for a year?
Yeah.
I don't know how much value I would be with policy and procedures, but I feel my name would be filling a space, and I'm willing to do that.
If I may, that committee is waiting for a charge. It really hasn't met very frequently, and it really hasn't taken on any substantive issues. However, I think the issues are out there, and I think as a commission, we could easily assign things to policy and procedure that would otherwise take regular deliberation at the board level.
I can't remember the last thing we referred to you guys.
We had a meeting scheduled in December, I think, which we canceled.
Yeah, I'm actually the coordinator of policies and procedures. And, yeah, we have not had items. Typically, the board will refer items to policies and procedures, and then that will
Yeah.
cause the meeting to be triggered. The bylaws, which we did draft last year, which never existed before we drafted, stated that we would set a standing quarterly meeting and as needed. So we had no need for one after we set those bylaws. So we're still
Yeah.
waiting to approve the minutes from that meeting.
Like the rules and rules of conduct.
That was discussed at
Yeah,
policies
The
and
other one
procedures.
that came up
yes.
recently was naming of building, county
Yeah,
buildings.
building naming
or
policy,
parks, or putting up statues of people, things like that, for our policies and procedures.
Okay, so my sheet with lots of scratching is completed. So at this time, I'll ask for any commissioners who want to be recognized to make a motion to approve Order 19-1-15-9.
I'll make a motion. We move to approve item 2C, order 19-01-1509, in the matter of appointing representatives to Lynn County standing committees.
Okay, and just for clarification, that includes the items that Ms. Jones has written down.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, excuse me.
Second. So moved by Commissioner Buck, second by Commissioner Burney to approve Order 19-1-15-9. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. Vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Chair Sorensen, may I
Yes, sir.
I
was going to ask, I know you have one more
Yeah,
thing. I was going to ask if you could perhaps
do that now.
do that now.
Okay.
I have a 4:15 in Salem. that I'm
Okay.
gonna make.
We are now looking at our agenda to make sure we're doing everything we need to do. And I'm going to move to item 5, which is other business. This is a motion, this is following our executive session today, and this is a motion to delegate authority to county council to take any steps necessary to terminate litigation in the matter of Clackamas County et al., the MERS Corporation. For the public's benefit, the board held a lengthy executive session this afternoon, conferred with counsel regarding this litigation, and at this time, I invite a commissioner to make a motion to do this.
Do you have the wording there?
Right there, top of the page, 2 lines.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'd like to move to delegate authority to county council to take any steps necessary to terminate the litigation in Clackamas County et al. versus the MERS Corporation.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Bozievich, second by Commissioner Burney to direct the county council and delegate authority to the county council to take any steps necessary to terminate this litigation. We had high hopes that this would result in some benefit to Lane County, and I'm sorry, but it just looks like it's not going to be going to work out for us, and I'm sorry, but I think the best course is to approve this. And commissioners are allowed to comment on matters such as this, but we have to be careful of not discussing matters that have arisen in executive session. Okay, is there further debate, discussion, commentary, or otherwise info? Okay, seeing nothing further, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. And thank you, Mr. Dingle, for your
Thank you, Board,
assistance.
for accommodating me in that.
Thank you. Okay, we are now back on our regular agenda, item D, which is item 2D, possible continued discussion and possible action on order 19-01-15-10 in the matter of appointing a representative to the Association of ONC Counties. As you may recall, we have on our current relationship with the Association of ONC Counties, one voting delegate that the board selects. We receive 3 votes at the Association of ONC Counties, and that one person carries those 3 votes. You heard me talk about this the other day, that I was hoping that we could make a pretty significant change in our relationship with the Association of ONC Counties. But at this time, I'll just turn it over to the board for discussion. Commissioner Bozievich.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So I'm going to pass around a copy of the amended bylaws for the ONC Association. Unfortunately, it's the marked up version because that's all I have a copy of. I don't have the final version with the strikeouts and all removed. And I got an extra copy for you, so you can post that if you need to on our website. And at the back of it also is a copy of the board order from December appointing me as the board member to the ONC counties. The bylaws no longer talk about the counties need to delegate those 3 votes. At least as far as I've been trying to look back and forth through here. So I'm not even sure this item is necessary at this time. We've already appointed myself as the board member for Lane County for 2019. And every county is allowed to appoint a board member. The change in the bylaws was to change that from a vote where those 3 votes mattered of the folks that were attending the annual meeting to each board of commissioners appoints that person, but it had to be done before the end of the year, so that's why it happened in December. So I somewhat questioned the need for this agenda item at all. And then, you know, and then on top of that, I would strongly recommend that we take our time about any action around the ONC Association and have a longer discussion, and maybe even have representatives of the association make a presentation to the board about their value, because I think a lot of the emails I've been receiving have factual errors in them, and it's also been a form email that was obviously generated from a website, because I've gotten the same email over and over and over again with the exact same wording. So I don't think there's a need to take action today, and I would recommend maybe the agenda team looking at maybe a work session and an invitation to maybe Tim Freeman and Rocky to come up and talk about, you know, what does the association do, how do they operate, you know, there's been, accusations about lack of transparency and other issues that I think they could address.
Okay, so it sounds like we do not need to approve this board order today. And so if there's more discussion, let's have it.
So I wasn't the only one that got emails? I'm sorry. Interestingly, my objection, and perhaps it can't even be dealt with, but I just wished we had an opportunity to have someone else on that board, but according
It had to be
TJ,
done
it
by
had
the
to
end of the
be-
year.
So it wasn't this
Yeah.
board that appointed for next year.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what I was looking forward to. Otherwise, I would agree. I would like to learn more about the arguments on both sides. I do have a question. How long has Lane County been a member of this group?
The association was formed in the 20s, so I'm not sure if we joined in the 20s or it's been more recent, but it's been around a long time, and I think we've always participated because we're the second largest ONC land after Douglas.
Well, I can tell you from my experience with the Association of ONC Counties, it goes back to 1975, and Ken Tolinar, formerly of the University of Oregon Governmental Research Program, did a lot of work for the association. Ray Dorner, Douglas County Commissioner, was the elected head of it for many years. He then became the executive director. So in the 70s and 80s. 70s he was in the executive director, president. Then he was executive director for about 20 years. That brings us up to the 90s. Then
1925.
then Douglas County's longtime commissioner took his place, and
Doug Robertson.
Doug Robertson was head of it for probably 20 years, say,
President, yeah.
90s, 2000s, and now Tim Freeman, Douglas County Commissioner, is currently ahead of it. So it's had a strong connection to both Lane County and Douglas County as the two largest ONC counties. It sounds like for today, we are done with this matter. If we don't have to appoint anyone, then all other matters, can be brought up some other way, but be happy to entertain more discussion if the board wants to.
I agree. If we don't need to delegate anybody today, let's not. But I also agree with both of you that we should have a good substantial discussion about this later.
Okay.
Yes, we have plenty of time here, so
Yeah,
so
and
let's talk
I
about
agree
it.
with that.
And have both sides of people who are interested in this subject to come and speak to us.
Okay, well, we are quickly getting to the point where we could make those agenda team requests, because we are now ready to conclude. So basically, just to conclude, item 1901-15-10, that will be withdrawn, not signed, not a board order. Okay? Okay, so now we're down to commissioners' business. We typically divide that in terms of announcements and then agenda team issues. Any commissioner announcements?
Sure.
Okay,
As we sit here, 99 Camp is being vacated. And the latest news that I've heard is that things are going pretty smoothly. We're hoping, expecting that it will be fully vacated by this evening, however, prepared for the eventuality that it's not. I'm going to be headed out there on my way home from here. It is close to my home, and I was in there pre-dawn this morning. And what I can report from what I've personally seen is that there's very little tension in there. Now, when I say tension, I don't recognize anybody throwing things and being particularly upset about things. But I'll give another report after what I see tonight. And Commissioner Byrne, I know you were there over the weekend, perhaps. But it's dynamic. What is happening there is happening as we sit here, and there's a great deal of help being levied in that direction. So My hope and my anticipation and my expectation is that each person who has been staying at the camp, some of whom have stated that this is the first secure place they've had to live as far back as they can remember, that as secure as this may be, you know, a tent inside a perimeter with the rain and sleet in the my intention, my hope is that everybody will have a place, an option of where they can move, whether they should choose to live in an individual tent type dwelling, a tent, or communal dwelling, which is being provided in Dusk to Dawn and Dawn to Dawn programs adjacent. So people don't have to move very far, and we should have enough space, we will have enough spaces for everybody to move, should they choose to comply and do so. Comply is not the right word, if they choose to do so.
Okay, any other commissioner announcements? Okay, very good. We will now move to item 3B, agenda team requests, work session requests. I just wanted to report that Ms. Jones and I have talked about the extensive list of items that are currently pending as board work session or requests. I've also briefly spoken to Mr. Mokrahysky and County Council Dingle. I want to do two things here before we get into work session requests. The first is I would like everybody to read the pending requests, because in 2 weeks we are going to try to pare down the list in some fashion. What has been done in the past has been to start a new list every 2 years with the cohort of commissioners. Another thing that's been done is that anything that is, quote, old, which is to say 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, anything that's old gets taken off the list. And of course, commissioners can always put things back on the list. But I would like to not make any decisions about this, but bring to your attention that in 2 weeks, I'm hoping we will have a discussion. Mr. Mokrahysky may have some recommendations. How does that summarize our discussion? Okay.
Yes, and just to add, Ms. Jones, I believe emailed all of you, or was going to email all of you that list so that you can review it in advance of our next meeting on the 29th.
Correct. So on the 29th, I would like to discuss how much of this are we going to keep doing, ask staff to keep doing. One of my concerns, and this was raised earlier by Commissioner Bozovich, is if we are, making all these requests and there's a lot of staff time associated with it, and we're really not that interested in it, or it's being done anyway, then why is it on the list? So we're trying to simplify and make clear what it is the board feels important enough to have on this list. Yeah.
I want to make sure that there is an item on that list, if it's not already.
Okay.
It's important to me, specifically given our meeting yesterday regarding Chapter 16. I wanted to make sure that we came back and directed staff to look at the siding standards specifically.
Okay.
Because that was the most contentious issue that I saw, and I'm hoping that we have then head nods in order to do that.
Well, let's finish the general discussion of what Ms. Jones asked me to bring up, which was this. And the other thing she asked me to, and I don't mean to cut you off, but we will have work session requests or work agenda team requests in just a moment.
Okay.
But the other thing that Ms. Jones asked that I bring up is a clarification on the Measure 102 work session. And that work session was brought up by me, actually, and that was before the election, the November 2018 election. I brought up that if Measure 102 passed, could we have a work session on Measure 102? Measure 102 was the bonding constitutional amendment allowing local governments to bond and contract with private entities, not just public entities. And at the time, I asked if this passes, let's get a work session on it. Well, it did pass, and her question to me was, what does the board want to do about this? My feeling is that, with the interest in housing on this board, which includes 5 of our 5 commissioners, we would like to, get a comprehensive presentation on what this measure says, what the rights of local governments are, how it might work, how it is working, what other governments in Oregon that are allowed to issue these bonds are doing. So I just feel like it's an important thing, but I also want to make sure that the board is clear on what it's asking for.
I don't know any other government that's used Measure 102 yet. So what other governments are doing is zero. It's too new.
But if we can talk about the possibilities of what could be done with it to at
Correct.
least sink in, some thoughts. And I'm sure the Housing Policy Board is going to probably be reviewing this with fine tooth comb. But, we should be aware of something if they come to the board and want to talk about putting something together.
Okay?
I absolutely agree with, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I absolutely agree with that. I didn't hear any, that's absolutely, nothing has occurred to date, but nonetheless, to organize a session around our understanding of this, of the state of the art, the possibilities that may be out there, what would and wouldn't comply with that. I see this as a huge opportunity for us.
Well, I'll agree with Commissioner Vozovich, nothing's been done because it's
Yes.
brand new. I agree.
Exactly.
On the other hand, I agree with you that maybe we should get ahead of the curve. And I have a simple idea, and that is, Mr. Dingle is he's very able to make a report about what a law does or doesn't allow us to do. So maybe we could just bite off a bit of this whole thing and just have Mr. Dingle come, make a presentation on what Measure 102 is, what it allows us to do, and whatever other information he can bring to us. We will then get into housing experts who have had more time to try to figure out what to do with this. I guess I like the idea of hearing from the Housing Policy Board, but I guess I want to get the board the information. This is back to my discussion of the committees. I want the board to get the information about the rights and responsibilities that the board has if it wishes to take advantage of Measure 102 authority. So is that clear enough, Mr. Administrator, for having Mr. Dingle come and make a presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pete,
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
I'm still kind of wondering what they're going to present on, because what Measure 102 did was expand something we were already allowed to do. We are allowed to bond affordable housing projects. The only thing it changed is now we can use public resources to bond a project that will not be owned by a public entity. It allows for us to bond projects that could be under the ownership of a private entity at the end of the project, which that's the big difference in law. And I don't know how much that needs, Mr. Dingle to come and explain to us or anything. It's basically our ability to take public resources and subsidize a private entity, which is one of the reasons why there was a very large contingent against it.
Well, could we, for example, put out a request for proposals for private housing development? And that's an example. What's your view on that?
We could, but you're talking about using our public bonding authority. I think it'd probably be more important for us to understand what is our bonding capacity at Lane County and how do those bonds get paid back and what impact does that have on the rest of our budget. If we choose to bond a $50 million low-income housing project, we got to pay that back out of our general fund.
Were you gonna say something?
So that to me is a much more
Well,
important conversation than
it-
the fact that we can now also subsidize a private entity with that money.
Yeah, okay, Commissioner Fall.
And, have sat on the housing policy board through lots of discussions on this, and it really, it probably is more for other jurisdictions than Lane County. I think we'll probably see the city of Portland and maybe Multnomah County acting on it fairly quickly because they have a very different financial situation.
They also have more money than God, yeah.
They do, and they also have a lot more developers there who are ready to step out and do it.
They have more
However,
money than God.
I'm in favor of us exploring every
to
single
us.
possibility on this, every avenue that we possibly can, because if there is some way that we can use it in our fight, in our struggle to add more housing, without being detrimental to our general fund health, then I think we need to at least look and see what is available. That's my personal feeling on it. I didn't go door-to-door campaigning for this, but I made phone calls for a yes on 102. So, you know, let's say, I like the tool, and in fact, I don't know, maybe the city of Eugene is more equipped to do it than we are, than the county, but, you know, the option is there.
It sounds like maybe we could ask not only Mr. Dingle to come and talk about what the law allows us to do or not do, but we could also ask our county assessor to come and talk about, well, if you issue bonds, who's going to pay those bonds back? It was suggested that we would ask the general fund to pay those dollars back. I don't think that's what the measure says. I think it says that the public would pay the money back, but it wouldn't go to the general fund of Lane County. Taxpayers would be at some risk here, and what I want to find out is this a good tool or not? I personally campaigned for this measure. I think it's a good thing. I think the state needs a lot more affordable housing, and I think if we can partner with people that are trying to build affordable housing, let's try to do it. Let's don't just wait around for some nonprofit that struggles to ask people for money to try to help build nonprofit housing. Let's do what we can.
And Mr. Chair, if we look at tools, this isn't an earth mover.
Yeah.
You know, this is a trowel at best, I'm sure. But pardon me, Heather, if, you know, John Van Landingham's been a large part of this. If we were to have a discussion on it, having him come and present his perspective.
Yeah.
Norton, Cabell perhaps, give their perspective on it.
Maybe, I know Mr. Van Langham is very interested in this. He has been a longtime member of the Housing Policy Board, obviously has worked for Legal Aid for many years. Perhaps we could have 3 people. I'm expanding the list now to the county council, what's the basics of the law, the assessor, and the tax and bond implications to taxpayers, and last but not least, an expert such as Norton Cabell, who's the current chair of the Housing Policy Board, or John Van Lanningham, who's a longtime member.
They take turns
You know.
being chair.
Yeah, they take turns being chair. So those are, you know, that's a way to give Ms. Jones a little more detail on what it is the board wants to do. And again, if the board does not want to have this presentation, believe me, we got 28 items pending right now. So there's a lot of work. And if we're going to meet, you know, half a day on Tuesdays, we're probably not going to be able to get all this work done. Yep.
No, actually, Heather's
Oh,
been trying.
okay, Heather.
You know, there's a few more things that Measure 101 did.
102.
I'm sorry, 102 did. And we can, I think part of the presentation should go into that, in addition to what Chair Bosnich said. I also believe that Lane County can do something substantial in the housing crisis that we're feeling now with Measure 102. I don't want to discount what we can or cannot do. I do completely understand whether we need to discuss whether we have bonding capacity to do anything, but there are a lot of people very hopeful that we can push something forward that might go into the 102 category on a county level so that it includes not just Eugene or Eugene and Springfield, it includes the whole county, including our rural areas. So I feel pretty strongly about this and definitely support talking about it. I just want to talk about it in a broader sense than the core as well.
Okay, Commissioner.
I completely concur. And I would just like to say that when that occurs, I think we'll be able to talk about things that perhaps haven't been discussed. For example, how one organizes incentives that attract even more private dollars to develop housing that's affordable to more people. There are all sorts of doors that this unlocks, and I think it would be a disservice to prematurely dismiss the board having a work session on it because it's such an opportunity for Lane County.
Okay, so I have now answered Ms. Jones' question about 102. I've given you notice that we're going to try to have a more substantive discussion of the current 28 items that are on.
But are you giving us 2 weeks to add to that? Or
We are giving you 2 weeks to add or subtract.
subtract, okay.
And these items go back to June 13, 2017, so they may all be valid, they may not. We'll see. So at this time, I'll call for any work session requests, and I'll first call on Commissioner Buck because you started in on the Chapter 16
Right.
stuff.
I don't know if it's a work session item, how to present it, but I want to see the citing standards come back before us with some more information, given the testimony that we had yesterday.
Okay, and I have what I would call a friendly amendment to this request. The issue of forest fire and forest fire standards and standards for fire in rural Lane County, it relates to a what I would call a fire and flood component, where flooding is related to fires, as fire happens in the summer or fall, and then the flood happens in the spring. I would like to have maybe a work session on what I would call a fire and flood, and this 16 component is part of that. But I'd like to broaden that to a fire and flood concept.
That's fine.
And this is,
As long
this,
as it includes this particular section
yeah,
as well.
yeah, of course. So I would just like to see it broader than just the fire. Before we put such a thing on the calendar for more work, I want to make sure there are, yeah, I want to make sure there's at least 3 commissioners that want to bring this up. Are there 3 commissioners that want to bring this up?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that was part of, you know,
Part of the motion,
sort of part of the motion yesterday,
Yeah.
or at least a part of the explanation of
Okay.
Commissioner Buck's support for the motion to move ahead with the ordinance, was that this come back for a discussion on the citing standards. You know, I'm not quite sure why we need to discuss flood, because there's a lot of land use regulation about construction in floodplains and floodways. I think the real issue was, does there need to be any revision of the citing standards for fire protection? And I think that was the major issue that was brought up. But I'm happy to have it come back and look at the citing standards for I think it was the F1, F2, and marginal land zones that had the citing standards built into them.
And are you okay with my addition about talking about fire and flood?
I don't think there's a reason to talk about flood, because flood's handled in a different section of code. You know, there's restrictions about building a floodway, there's restrictions about building in floodplains. I don't know why when we're talking about land use code, we're talking about specific pieces of the code. So unless you want to try and bring in some other pieces of the code, the citing standards don't address floodway. Other than, I think there's a restriction that you can't cite in a floodway. That's, you know, I just, looking at Chapter 16, if it's going to be relative to Chapter 16 and the citing standards, I don't think there's anything addressing floods in that section of code. So bringing floods into it would be adding a new piece to that section of code. I don't understand the intertie between
Well,
this.
okay, you're right. If flood is in 14, did you say 14?
I'm not sure what it
Okay,
is, but.
if flood is in one section and fire's in another section, the reason I'm bringing it up isn't to comment on any specific land use decision or amendment to a code that we've just had. I'm just talking about how important I think it is that Lane County make sure that its fire and flood ordinances are up to snuff. And I am looking at first stage to information and having a work session on those topics. So that's what I'm saying. And I want to be clear that,
So are you asking for LMD staff to come back and at least give a report on where in the code our flood restrictions are and what they do?
yeah, and also
That- That's a
this,
different request.
okay, and all this, too.
Yeah.
We've had flood insurance issues, and that's broader even,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, all right, so are there any other work session requests? Yes, sir.
So, last week, a work session request was approved to look at the economic impact of climate change because somebody came in December and handed the board a report and made some testimony about it. Yesterday, we had testimony about the economic impact of illegal immigration. And I would like to ask for an agenda item to come back to look at that impact. If we're going to look at one, we should look at that also, seeing we've had public testimony to that effect. Yeah, the economic impact on Lane County of illegal immigration. All right. If that, if it's okay to do it with this, I think it's okay to do it with that.
Okay, well, are there three commissioners who want to have a report back by who? By,
I guess who's coming back to report on this?
Mr. Nemi, he's the one who wrote the memo.
I think we could probably find somebody that could come back and do a report on the economic
Well,
impact.
I'll just say I'm against this, but we don't schedule these unless there are three commissioners. So are there three commissioners who want to schedule a work session on illegal immigration and its economic impact on Lake County?
I'm struck.
And I think a discussion surrounding,
That's a
So
no.
I guess
I'm
I'm trying to make a point here. Somebody comes to public comment, makes a comment on something, and it's generating work for staff and setting up a work session. I just picked that one particular person yesterday. And in particular, in this one, the basis of what he's written the economic impact around isn't settled science. And I know that, and to you, maybe, okay, as the only commissioner that has a BS on this board, it's not settled science. As a commissioner that has a brother that works for NASA, it's not settled science. So we're going to hold a work session about the supposed economic impacts about something that, how about we hold a work session on about the science first, and then we hold a work session on the economic impact if we decide the science is okay. But I really don't think we're qualified necessarily to do that. It just gets to where, are we gonna start running our board meetings based on who shows up for public comment a month before?
I guess if there are three commissioners that want to have this work session, we'll have it. I'm not in favor of having it, but I will certainly go by the board majority.
I have no interest.
Okay? You two have not offered your opinion on whether we should have a work session or not.
it sounds to me that the request of the work session is almost tongue-in-cheek, that it's more making a point regarding how do we get a work session and what prompts.
What prompts the
decision
request
to
for a work session?
Have staff put the work into work sessions.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something we should talk about as opposed to, I mean, I'm certainly not in favor of discussing the economic impact of illegal immigration. What is illegal immigration,
Right.
So,
I'll be honest, that was a setup.
yeah.
Oh, you set me up. Thanks a lot, Jay.
And I believe the testimony in December was a setup.
Well,
So that's my point, is, are we going to start having individual commissioners solicit public testimony so they can come back later and ask for agenda items on personal agendas? And is that the way we're going to occupy our staff time for the next 4 years?
So,
Or are we going to be a little bit more deliberate about this?
I don't see three commissioners that want to have this work session, so I'll ask, are there any other suggestions for
Yeah.
work sessions? Yeah.
And I appreciate what you're saying, but ironically, what I had, the two things that I was going to request at some point was looking at regional economic development in Lane County, because and let me explain why I say that, because I've come across no less than 8 or 9 separate, somewhat uncoordinated, separately funded people who are in charge for their various communities for economic development. And I know that at one time, in a different time and place in this county, we had the Eugene-Springfield Metro Partnership. We had other things that served that coordinated role. So I'm hoping we can look at that. That was one that I was going to request. And the other...
Can I interrupt you to clarify this request? I'm hearing maybe a work session on regional economic development with our major partners that have an economic development function, maybe Lane Workforce Partnership,
City of Eugene.
City of Eugene,
City of Springfield.
City of Springfield, maybe the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce.
as well as the Springfield chain, and there might be others I'm completely unaware of. But I do want to say that this also came out of discussions when Mr. Mokraheisky was kind enough to have me meet with Sarah Means of Economic Development. We talked about other expertise in the community that could add value to what we were doing at the county, and that's where this kind of germinated from.
I'm excited about that, Joe, because I think we'll find that there's more coordination than most people realize.
And there may be.
But there's an opportunity for even greater coordination. So, yeah.
So how about we make this a board assignment to have a briefing on regional economic development, and Sarah Means would be assigned to,
If I have 2 weeks, I would make this more coherent than it's sounding right now and bring it back to the board if that
why don't, if you're okay with that, and do that in 2 weeks?
if that's okay, yes.
Yeah.
And I have one other item too.
Okay, go for it.
And that was, I've not yet had the opportunity, nor if I have the opportunity, will I implement planning anyone to make testimony so I can say, let's have a work session. But I do have a background in renewable energy, and I do know that as a county, we don't have any particular climate goals or climate.
That too, yeah.
Okay, great. And I do know, because this is an area I am familiar with, that there are over 100 cities and counties across the United States that have actually made commitments to achieving 100% renewable energy as drivers for economic development. So I was also going to request giving me a week or two to be more coherent, but a work session on how the county might look at adopting a climate action plan.
I think that one of the things that I'd hoped to accomplish with Mr. Nemi's presentation on the 29th about climate change and its impacts on Lane County is that we would then have some other work session items that would follow up from that.
Whatever's
One of which is this, and we can either do that now, or we can do that when it's a little more clear after his presentation and your additional thought on what to do. There is a national climate resolution of local governments I've seen. Santa Clara County made a resolution on climate change. Last year, they sent that resolution out to a number of commissioners around the country. We have not followed up on that, to the best of my knowledge. So that's a possibility that we could build into it. Yes, sir. Oh, okay.
I think there's enough interest in the community that we really owe it to the community to have a discussion. And so give it to you 2 weeks to mature in your brain. And
Please, if you would. Thank you.
I'll also mention it in Ernie Nemi's memo that I distributed on the 9th. and that we put up on our website, he quotes from a resolution and has a proposed language for a resolution in his remarks.
Well, you know, if I may, I've read over 100 resolutions from different places, and some of them are more statements of philosophy, and others actually are implementable. Some could be implemented if there was some appropriate mechanism of oversight, and others are just kind of pie-in-the-sky things. So that's why if you do allow me time to mature the thought, I'm kind of incoherent after the last 2 days. I'll bring something back that at least can benefit from best practices.
Okay, so are there any other requests for work sessions or follow-up? Okay,
Kindness that's maturing.
very good. Any other business, under 5, any other business? We took care of the matter of Clackamas County versus MERS. Yes.
We need to review assignments.
We need to review assignments,
So this is
so,
where I would go through all the things you've talked about yesterday and today, hopefully. And answer. And what happens here is Ms. Jones listens to this discussion, and then she puts these items, these assignments you've talked about, onto that spreadsheet that Commissioner Sorensen showed you. So the first was a request from Commissioner Buck in the discussion regarding item 13C to have a work session regarding the site, Chapter 16 citing standards, and have land management report back with more information. The second is to continue to explore, we have an open assignment to evaluate car camping in county parks and other properties, and so that's one we're gonna keep open and continue to evaluate and bring back a future discussion when appropriate to the board on additional car camping opportunities. The third is Commissioner Burney's request. I'm not sure if I missed one of you. Did you have a request about stormwater that I missed?
No, no.
Okay.
The only thing I think I'm not sure whether it got picked up was when we talked about, we deleted the ONC item, we talked about having them make a presentation to us.
Association of ONC Counties?
Yeah.
Come and make a presentation?
Yeah.
So that's, okay, so then,
I think I would modify that slightly, that if the board is going to bring in the Association of ONC Counties, that we have a balanced presentation.
Can we do that with Mr. Nemi?
We could do that with Mr. Nemi. If you have people that do not think there are climate, you know, you can have them come for public testimony.
I've got physicists, meteorologists. I
So,
can call.
that's what I'm saying is, I believe that the request was modified by the comment that opposing point of view about the Association of ONC Counties. So it wouldn't be just a presentation by the Association of ONC Counties. And for sort of historical reference, when the board contemplated getting out of the Association of ONC Counties, that was not done. It was a one-sided thing. They came in, told us how great they were, and left, and then the board continued on a 3-2 vote to continue to finance their activities.
so what I need direction on is who would you, because we just need to schedule that, right? So we'll schedule a presentation by ONC Counties, and if you want another party to come and present another perspective, we just need to know who that is, so that we can coordinate that. The same with the climate discussion
Yeah, I can
request.
put-
I just want to be clear about that, so that from the staff perspective, when we're scheduling these items, you know, we're not having to play a guessing game about what the expectation that you have set is. So do you have an idea of who the other party would be regarding the ONC item?
I guess we'll invite the commissioners to give you ideas of who that could be.
Okay. Okay. So that's the third, so the first one was the work session regarding sighting standards. The second was the car camping item. The third is the presentation by Association of ONC Counties and potentially others. That's the third. Fourth was Commissioner Burney's request for a work session regarding regional economic development, including our community partners. And I think if we can include Sarah Means and maybe
Well, of course.
coordinating with you around who, if we're inviting chambers or other, okay? So we like to assign people to this, so we'll put your Commissioner Burney as the requesting party and Sarah Means as the staff person to work with you on that. And then the fourth request, Commissioner Burney and Buck discussed a work session to talk about climate and renewable energy goals, best practices. So that will be a discussion item as well. Finally then, while this isn't a specific assignment, I'm lumping it in with the overall courthouse discussion. I just want to again reiterate that the board directed us, I heard the majority supporting, or at least leaning in the direction of a voter pamphlet. And so we'll move in that direction unless we get other direction. And I did not hear support for additional polls for the time being. So I think that's everything.
And the 102 clarification.
And yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna
Yeah,
mention
sorry
that.
about that. Okay, so I forget what number we're on now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think that's 6. Number 6 is the presentation regarding Measure 102. And you discussed 3 people, Steve Dingle, Mike Coles, and a third individual,
From the Housing Policy
Housing
Board,
Policy Board.
possibly Norton Cabell or
John
Van
Van
Lanningham.
Okay, good. So that's it on review of assignments, and then just, if you're done with that and you're moving on to other business, I just had one, while I have an audience here, one quick update on Camp 99. That'll take about 30
My
seconds.
only comment on your list was I wanted to get my flood thing into the 16. You mentioned the 16 from yesterday, which we had a hearing about.
Oh, yeah, you included,
16,
you amended that
And then
to
we
say-
had, today, we had the proposal for a work session.
Right.
And my idea of having flood and fire.
Flood and fire being part of the discussion, the information land management brings back
Correct.
on the siting standards, okay. So brief, without prolonging your meeting any longer, just a brief update for you so that you get the most updated information. We have really work to flex here. The Camp 99 closed on Monday, but we have worked over the past 48 hours to continue to transition individuals. Our mission has been to get the camp closed, to deal with the health and safety, cleanup and remediation, but do it in a way that results in no arrests, if possible, for anyone who's willing to accept options that we make available to them. We believe we've done that. The inner camp has now been closed and everyone has been moved out. There have been no arrests as of yet. We've kept the outer portion, which is where the porta potties and hand washing station are, still open for a little bit here this afternoon for individuals who are waiting for transportation to other locations. The vast majority of campers have moved to the St. Vinny's site to the north. And a clarification I want to make, you mentioned dusk to dawn versus dawn to dawn. 100% of the beds that are now over 200 beds provided by St. Vincent de Paul are dawn to dawn. So we've actually made all of those beds, individuals can stay until between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., the time at which they do cleanup and replenishing of supplies, as well as the 25 tent option at St. Vincent de Paul's site. So most people have moved to there. I mentioned yesterday a couple that we moved to Armitage. Really nice story. I told you the woman is a bookkeeper, was holding 2 jobs during tax season in Cottage Grove. We've worked with Pastor Wayne Martin and others in Cottage Grove to find both that couple and their 3 dogs to be hosted at a church in Cottage Grove, close to where she's working. So that's a great, for at least a few days until we get them something additional. That's a great story. And then we've also moved an additional 2 people, a father and daughter, who would not accept any option at St. Vincent de Paul or go into any program. We've gotten them a spot at Armitage Park. So they were 2 of the last individuals that were not wanting to accept any of the other options, but we are moving them and we're going to pay for their campsite for 2 weeks until another option is found for them. So again, we're working aggressively and thoughtfully to try to get folks transitioned without any arrests, and really hopeful that that's going to happen here tonight.
Just one small thing on that, and what I'm impressed with so far is the preservation of the dignity of the people who have been staying on the camp. It's been key, and it's been high on the radar for all the people who are helping everyone, assisting everybody to move. For instance, if they're not, somebody has a disability of some kind that requires special equipment that isn't easy to move. Well, finding ways to move it in ways that don't highlight or extenuate the fact that they are moving special equipment. And when the people doing the moving are doing that. And really, when we're working with folks who have so little, the dignity is a very fragile element. And it's something that I really would like to commend Mr. Mokrahayski and the staff that have been working on this in preserving that eggshell dignity that really folks are clinging onto. And you can put yourself in the situation where you have nothing other than the tent on your back. That's it. And with no wealth, no options, no choices, no TV shows to watch, no choice of which movie to go watch tonight or where to eat dinner. The few things that you do have, making sure that you have, that we know that they are yours and that we're not going to wreck that. That's kind of a stumbling through, is the fact that dignity is a really key element here, and our staff has done a good job of maintaining that.
Devin has a live video camera in her office, so if any of you, 2 at a time, would like to go and see a live camera feed of the site and what it's looking like right now, you're welcome to stop by and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, anything further under other business that any commissioner wants to raise? Seeing none, we are adjourned until Tuesday,
Wishful thinking.
Tuesday, January, yeah, you can see what this has done to me in 2 weeks. Tuesday, January 22 at 20.
29.
20.
We're off next week.
No, we're meeting with the city of Eugene.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're joint
Okay,
elected.
see, I'm glad I'm saying this. Mr. Jingle asked me to state the next time and place of the board meeting, so I am attempting to do that. Thank you for all your help. It will be Tuesday, January 22 at 5:30 p.m. And I want to also announce Commissioner Buck is going to work on the agenda on Tuesday, January 22, for the planning of the January 29 board meeting. And that meeting is 8 a.m. So, public meeting, the transportation big meeting, the homeless TAC report,
When is
big
that?
meeting. That is a big meeting. It's Tuesday, the 22nd of January in Harris Hall, joint meeting with the City Council of Eugene. It'll be at 5:30, and they have a public hearing on another matter at 7. So we will be there for about 90 minutes.
Mr. Chair, you have assigned me to 5 more committee meetings before the end of this week. So-
Yeah, well, I did my best to avoid that. Okay, so we are now adjourned. Thank you. Oh, I'm supposed to do it 3 times.